Imagine for a moment that the foundations of everything you trust are starting to crack. The institutions you thought were rock solid are crumbling. The leaders you looked up to are gone, and a shadow is stretching across the horizon, a shadow of a superpower, so ruthless, so technologically advanced in the art of war, that the very mention of its name makes hearts stop. This was the atmosphere in Jerusalem in the year 740 BC. The air didn't just carry the dust of the Judean hills, it carried the heavy, suffocating scent of national anxiety. King Uzziah was dead. For 52 years, he had been the symbol of stability. He was the good king who brought prosperity, strengthened the walls, and made the nation feel invincible. But now, he was gone, and in the vacuum of his passing, the people of Judah looked north and saw the Assyrian war machine, a terrifying empire that didn't just conquer nations, they erased them. It's in this moment of collective panic that a man named Isaiah ben Amos walks into the temple. He's not there for a routine ritual. He's there because his world is falling apart. He's there to ask the questions we all ask when the world goes dark. Where is God? Does he see this? Is there any hope left for us? What Isaiah encountered in that temple would not only answer his questions, but would shatter his reality. He didn't just see a religious ceremony. He saw the king behind all kings. He saw a throne that wasn't vacant. He saw the Holy One of Israel. And that vision, that terrifying, beautiful, world-shaking vision, became the heartbeat of the longest, most profound, prophetic book ever written. Welcome to the deep dive into the book of Isaiah. This is not just ancient history. This is a story about justice, about the failure of human politics, and about a hope so radical it would take 700 years to fully arrive. This is the fifth gospel. This is the epic of Isaiah, the courtroom of the cosmos. Before we get to Isaiah's famous vision in the temple, the book opens with a scene that feels like a high-stakes legal drama. God doesn't start with a hello. He starts with a lawsuit. Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth. The creator of the universe calls the entire cosmos as a jury. The defendant? His own children. Imagine the heartbreak in the divine voice when he says, I reared children and brought them up, but they have rebelled against me. He points to the animals. An ox knows its owner, a donkey knows its master's manger, but Israel, they don't even know who feeds them. As you listen to these opening words, you can feel the tension. Judah had become a society of religious performance. Their streets were full of blood and injustice, yet their temple was full of smoke and songs. They thought they could bribe God with sacrifices while ignoring the orphan and the widow. But God's response is chilling. I have had enough. Your new moon festivals and your appointed feasts, my soul hates. This is the first great lesson Isaiah has for our modern world. God is not impressed by our rituals if our hearts are cold toward our neighbor. He isn't looking for religious busyness. He's looking for a thoroughly washed soul. He offers a deal that sounds too good to be true. Come now, let us settle the matter. Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. But the people wouldn't listen. They preferred the shadow of Egypt and the gold of their idols. And so, the storm began to gather. The vision, undone by holiness. Now, we come to the pivot point, chapter 6. The death of King Uzziah. Isaiah is in the temple. Perhaps he's standing near the altar of incense. Suddenly, the physical world begins to peel back like a curtain. He doesn't see a dead king, he sees the living king. He sees the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lifted up. The train of his robe, just the very hem, is so vast that it fills the entire temple. Think about that imagery. In the ancient world, the length of a king's robe represented his glory and his reach. God's robe is so immense that there is no room for anything else. And then there are the seraphim. These aren't the cute, chubby angels you see on Hallmark cards. These are burning ones. They have 6 wings, and they are screaming, not singing, but shouting with voices that make the massive stone foundations of the temple vibrate. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. In Hebrew, repetition is the way you express the superlative. God isn't just holy. He isn't just holy, holy. He is holy, holy, holy. He is the utter other. He is purity that would consume anything stained. Isaiah's reaction is the only honest reaction a human can have in the presence of the infinite. He doesn't pull out a notebook. He doesn't feel affirmed. He feels undone. He cries out, "Woe is me, I am ruined." He realizes that his mouth, the very organ he uses to speak for God, is unclean. But watch what happens next. One of the seraphim flies to the altar, takes a burning coal with tongs, and touches Isaiah's lips. It must have hurt. It was fire touching flesh. But the angel says, "See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for." This is the gospel in a single moment. God doesn't wait for us to get clean to meet him. He meets us in our woe is me state and cleanses us with his own fire. Only after Isaiah is cleansed does he hear the voice of the Lord asking, "Whom shall I send?" Isaiah's response is the anthem of every servant since. "Here am I, send me." The sign of Emmanuel, hope in the dark. But what was he being sent to do? His mission was heartbreaking. He was told to preach to a people who would hear but not understand, who would see but not perceive. He was to be a prophet to a nation that was intentionally closing its eyes. The political crisis deepens. A new king, Ahaz, is on the throne. He's a man of fear, not faith. The kingdoms of Israel and Aram are threatening to invade Jerusalem, and Ahaz is shaking like a leaf in the wind. He wants to call the Assyrian Empire for help, a move that would be like inviting a shark into your swimming pool to help with a goldfish problem. Isaiah meets Ahaz by the city's water supply and gives him a message from God. Be careful, keep calm, and don't be afraid. He offers Ahaz a sign from heaven. Ahaz, in a display of fake piety, refuses. So God gives his own sign. And this is the verse that has echoed through every Christmas Eve service for 2,000 years. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel. To Ahaz, this was a ticking clock. Before that child was old enough to know right from wrong, his enemies would be gone. But to us, looking back through the lens of history, this was the first whisper of the incarnation. God wasn't just going to send a message, he was going to send himself. He would be God with us in the midst of our political messes, our wars, and our fears. Isaiah then looks further into the future. He sees a land that is currently walking in deep darkness, but he sees a great light coming. He sees the birth of a child who will break the yoke of the oppressor. This child wouldn't be just another king. His names are a litany of divine power: Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. He sees a shoot growing out of the stump of Jesse. The family tree of David looked like it had been chopped down and burned, but Isaiah saw a tiny green sprout of life emerging from the ashes. He saw a king who would be filled with the Spirit of the Lord, who would judge with righteousness for the poor, and under whose reign even nature itself would be reconciled, where the wolf lies down with the lamb and the lion eats straw like the ox. As we end this first section, the tension is high. The Assyrian army is coming. The people are stubborn. The stump is being cut down. But the promise of Emmanuel is hanging in the air like a star in the middle of a midnight storm. The global audit, the pride of empires. As we move past Isaiah's personal vision and his early prophecies, the camera lens of the book pans out. It zooms away from the small streets of Jerusalem and begins a sweeping, terrifying tour of the ancient Near East. Chapters 13 through 23 are often called the oracles against the nations, but you can think of them as a global audit. Imagine a divine investigator walking into the boardrooms of the world's greatest superpowers. Isaiah points his finger at Babylon, the center of culture and pride. He points to Philistia, Moab, Damascus, Egypt, and even the merchant empire of Tyre. To a modern listener, this might feel like a list of ancient names, but to Isaiah's audience, these were the untouchables. These were the nations that held the world's wealth, the world's armies, and the world's influence. The message Isaiah delivers to them is a masterclass in the psychology of power. He addresses the king of Babylon in chapter 14 with words that have sparked thousands of years of theological debate. He describes a being who said in his heart, "I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God." Isaiah shows us that the root of all human evil isn't just doing bad things, it's the delusion of godhood. It's the belief that we are the masters of our own destiny, that we don't need a creator. Isaiah mocks this pride. He describes these mighty kings descending into Sheol, the grave, where the maggots are spread beneath them and worms cover them. He asks, "Is this the man who shook the earth and made kingdoms tremble?" This is a recurring theme in American storytelling. The fall of the mighty, and Isaiah captures it with more poetic gravity than any Hollywood script. He is telling the people of Judah, and he's telling us today, do not put your ultimate trust in political systems, military might, or economic stability. They are all temporary. They are all under the judgment of the one who sits above the circle of the earth. The little apocalypse, a world turned upside down. In the middle of these specific judgments, the book takes a strange and haunting turn in chapters 24 through 27. Scholars call this the Isaiah apocalypse. Suddenly, the prophet isn't just talking about Babylon or Egypt anymore. He's talking about the planet. He describes a vision where the earth is broken up and split asunder. He sees a world where the wine dries up, the merrymakers groan, and the city of chaos lies in ruins. If you were watching this as a movie, this is the part where the color drains from the screen and the music turns dissonant and heavy. Isaiah is describing the ultimate decreation. It's as if the world is returning to the void because human rebellion has polluted the earth. But right in the middle of this devastation, Isaiah does something unexpected. He starts a song. He sings about a rich feast that God will prepare on his holy mountain for all peoples. And then he speaks one of the most stunning promises in the entire Bible. He will swallow up death forever. The sovereign Lord will wipe away the tears from all faces. Think about that. 700 years before the New Testament, in the middle of a prophecy about judgment, Isaiah sees the end of death itself. He sees a God who isn't just a judge, but a comforter with a handkerchief, ready to wipe away the tears of a broken humanity. This is the deep magic of Isaiah. The darker the judgment, the brighter the hope. The siege, the psychology of fear. Now, the narrative shifts from poetic visions to a high-stakes historical thriller. We've reached chapters 36 through 39. The year is 701 BC. The Assyrian Empire, having already wiped out the northern kingdom of Israel, has arrived at the gates of Jerusalem. This is the climax of the first half of the book. King Hezekiah is on the throne. Outside the walls, 185,000 Assyrian soldiers are waiting. They aren't just there to fight, they are there to terrorize. The Assyrian field commander, the Rabshakeh, stands outside the wall and begins a psychological warfare campaign. He speaks to the people on the wall in their own language, Hebrew, so they can all understand. He mocks their faith. He says, "On what are you basing this confidence of yours?" He tells them that trusting in God is like leaning on a broken reed that will pierce your hand. He lists all the other gods of the nations he has already conquered and asks, did any of those gods save them? What makes you think your God is any different? This is a moment many of us can relate to. It's the voice of the world, or the voice in our own heads that says faith is a fairy tale for the weak. It's the voice that says, look at the facts, look at the data. You are surrounded, you are done. Hezekiah's reaction is the blueprint for spiritual survival. He doesn't argue with the commander. He doesn't try to negotiate. He goes into the temple, takes the threatening letter from the enemy, spreads it out before God, and prays. He says, Lord, it's true, they have destroyed the other nations, but they were just wood and stone. Show the world that you alone are God. The result is one of the most famous miracles in history. Isaiah sends a message to the king, don't be afraid, he will not enter this city. That night, a plague, the angel of the Lord, strikes the Assyrian camp. The most powerful army on earth retreats without firing a single arrow. Jerusalem is saved. The fatal flaw. A cliffhanger of pride. You would think the story ends there, a victory for the ages. But chapter 39 gives us a tragic twist that sets the stage for everything that follows. Envoys from Babylon, a rising power at the time, arrive in Jerusalem. They've heard of Hezekiah's recovery from a sickness and his victory over Assyria. Hezekiah, in a moment of sheer ego, decides to give them a grand tour. He shows them everything: the gold, the silver, the spices, the armory. He wanted them to be impressed by his wealth and his power. He forgot that everything he had was a gift of grace. Isaiah confronts him. He asks, "What did they see?" Hezekiah admits, "They saw everything." Isaiah's response is chilling. The time will surely come when everything in your palace will be carried off to Babylon. Nothing will be left. It is a crushing moment. The very city that was just miraculously saved from Assyria is now destined to be destroyed by Babylon because of the pride of its king. The first 39 chapters end on this somber note. The judgment is certain. The exile is coming. The temple will burn. The silence that follows chapter 39 is heavy. It feels like the end of the world. The people are headed for the darkness. But as the screen fades to black, a whisper starts to grow in the silence. It's the sound of a voice calling out in the wilderness, and it's about to change everything. We now enter what many historians and theologians call the heart of the prophets. If the first 39 chapters of Isaiah were a thunderstorm of judgment and historical conflict, the next section, chapters 40 through 55, is the sunlight breaking through the clouds. But it's not just a faint glimmer, it's a blinding restorative radiance. To truly feel the weight of these words, we have to imagine a massive gap in time. Between the end of chapter 39 and the start of chapter 40, about 150 years have passed. The warnings of Isaiah have come true. The city of Jerusalem is a ghost town. The temple is a pile of rubble. The descendants of the people Isaiah spoke to are now living as exiles in Babylon. Imagine being a third-generation exile. You've never seen the hills of Judah. You've only heard stories of the great temple from your grandparents. You live in the shadow of the ziggurats of Babylon, surrounded by a culture that tells you your God is dead, or at least defeated. You feel forgotten, discarded, and hopeless. You are asking the question that every suffering person eventually asks: is God still there? And if he is, does he still care about me? It is into this valley of deep shadow that a voice suddenly rings out, shattering the silence of a century. The voice of comfort. Comfort, comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem. The Hebrew word for tenderly literally means to the heart. God isn't shouting from a mountaintop anymore. He is whispering into the ear of a broken-hearted nation. He tells them their hard service is over. He tells them their sin is paid for. And then we hear that iconic call, a voice of one calling, "In the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God." To an American audience, the wilderness is a powerful metaphor. It's the place of wandering, the place where you're lost. But Isaiah says that God is building a superhighway through that very desert. Every valley of depression will be lifted up. Every mountain of pride will be made low. The rough places will be made smooth. Why? Because the glory of the Lord is coming back. This isn't just about a physical return to a city. This is about a God who refuses to stay distant. He is coming to his people. Isaiah then paints a picture of God that is so vast, it almost hurts the brain to contemplate. He asks the exiles to look at the nations. To God, the massive, terrifying empires of the world are like a drop in a bucket or dust on the scales. He describes God sitting above the circle of the earth, stretching out the heavens like a thin curtain. He challenges the people to look up at the stars, the same stars the Babylonians worshipped as gods, and says, "Who created all these?" He who brings out the starry host one by one and calls them each by name. The message is clear. If God has enough bandwidth to name every star in the trillions of galaxies, he certainly hasn't lost track of you in your Babylonian prison. This is the foundation of hope, the sovereignty of a creator who is intimately involved in the details of the broken. The scandal of the servant. As we move deeper into this section, a mysterious figure begins to emerge. Isaiah introduces us to someone he calls the servant. At first, the identity is a bit blurry. Sometimes the servant seems to be the nation of Israel. But as the poems progress, we realize that Israel is a blind and deaf servant. They can't save themselves, let alone the world. So, God introduces a person, a specific individual, who will do what the nation couldn't. This servant is unlike any hero the world had ever seen. He doesn't come with a political platform or a military strategy. Chapter 42 tells us he is gentle. He won't even break a bruised reed, that picture of someone so fragile they are about to snap, and he won't snuff out a smoldering wick. He is a hero of quiet, relentless compassion. But then, the story takes a dark, inexplicable turn. The servant's mission involves suffering. It involves being beaten and having his beard plucked out. Why would God's chosen hero be treated like a criminal? This leads us to chapter 53, the emotional and theological Everest of the entire Bible. If you are a storyteller, this is the ultimate twist. Isaiah describes a man who has no stately form or majesty to attract us. He wasn't a celebrity. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. People hid their faces from him. And here is the heart of the mystery. We, the onlookers, assumed he was being punished by God for his own failures. We thought he was stricken by God. But then the truth is revealed in a series of substitutionary statements that have changed millions of lives. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. Think about the sheer radical nature of this idea. In every other religion or philosophy, you pay for your mistakes. You carry your own guilt. But Isaiah sees a vision of a God who steps into the dock, takes the handcuffs, and receives the lashing that his rebellious children deserved. He is led like a lamb to the slaughter. He is silent. He dies among the wicked and is buried with the rich. Isaiah 53 reads like an eyewitness account of the crucifixion of Jesus, written 7 centuries before the Roman Empire even invented the cross. It is the fifth gospel. It is the explanation of how a holy God can be with us without destroying us. He destroys the sin by taking it upon himself. The invitation to the thirsty. The result of the servant's sacrifice isn't a funeral, it's a celebration. Chapter 54 is a shout of joy to the barren woman, to those who thought they had no future. God promises a covenant of peace that can never be shaken, even if the mountains are removed. And finally, we reach chapter 55. This is the climax of the servant's work. It is an invitation sent out to the entire world. Imagine a bustling marketplace in New York City or Los Angeles. Everyone is shouting, trying to sell you something. They want your money, your attention, your soul. And then a voice rises above the din, offering something that makes no sense in a capitalist world. Come, all you who are thirsty, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Isaiah asks the most piercing question in the book. Why spend money on what is not bread, and your labor on what does not satisfy? He is speaking to the American soul, the soul that works 60 hours a week to buy things that don't fill the emptiness inside. He's speaking to the exile in all of us. He offers a free banquet. He promises that his word will not return void, but will accomplish exactly what he sent it to do, like rain that turns a desert into a garden. As we finish this section, the people are still in Babylon. The walls of Jerusalem are still down, but everything has changed. They now know the way back. They know the price that will be paid. And they know the God who calls them by name. The journey is almost complete, but there is one final vision, the vision of what the world will look like when the servant finally takes his throne as king. We now arrive at the final movement of this grand symphony. We have traveled through the terrifying storms of judgment. We have walked through the dark valleys of the Babylonian exile, and we have heard the heartbreakingly beautiful songs of the suffering servant. Now, the curtain rises on the third and final act, chapters 56 through 66. To understand the atmosphere of these chapters, you have to imagine the scene on the ground. The exiles have finally returned to Jerusalem. The decree has been signed, the gates have opened, and the long walk home is over. But as the people stand among the charred ruins of their ancestors' city, the honeymoon phase of the return ends abruptly. The walls are still down, the economy is non-existent, and worst of all, the same old patterns of greed, selfishness, and social injustice are starting to sprout up like weeds in the ruins. The people are asking, "We are back in the land, so where is the glory? Where is the Emmanuel kingdom we were promised?" The house for all nations. The final section of Isaiah begins with a radical, almost scandalous expansion of the vision. In the ancient world, identity was everything. You were defined by your bloodline, your tribe, your borders. But in chapter 56, God throws the doors of the kingdom wide open. He speaks to the foreigners and the eunuchs, people who, under the old law, were often excluded from the inner circles of worship. God makes a stunning promise. "To them I will give within my temple and its walls a memorial and a name better than sons and daughters." He declares that his house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. For an American listener, this resonates with the highest ideals of our own melting pot culture, the idea that no matter where you come from, there is a place for you. But Isaiah takes it further. He says it's not about your DNA, it's about your heart's commitment to the covenant of justice. The crisis of authenticity. However, the prophet quickly pivots to a stinging critique of the people's fake spirituality. In chapter 58, we find one of the most powerful passages in all of Scripture regarding social justice. The people are complaining to God, "Why have we fasted, and you have not seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves, and you have not noticed?" God's response is a bucket of cold water. He tells them that while they are fasting and looking religious, they are still exploiting their workers and quarreling with one another. He defines what he calls true fasting. It isn't about skipping a meal, it's about breaking the chains of injustice. It's about sharing your bread with the hungry and bringing the homeless poor into your house. He tells them that if they focus on the needs of the marginalized, then, and only then, will their light break forth like the dawn and their healing quickly appear. Isaiah is teaching us that the kingdom of God isn't a private club for the pious. It is a movement of restorative justice for the broken world. The King of Beauty and Ashes. In the midst of this struggle for authenticity, a familiar figure reappears. It is the servant we met in the middle of the book, but now he is clothed in the authority of a king. Chapter 61 contains the words that would eventually define the mission of Jesus. "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, and release from darkness for the prisoners." This is the ultimate mission statement. It's a promise of total reversal. Isaiah says, "The King will give us beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair." For anyone listening who has ever felt like their life is nothing but a pile of ashes, whether from a broken relationship, a failed career, or a personal tragedy, Isaiah's message is that the King specializes in divine recycling. He takes the charred remains of our failures and weaves them into a crown of beauty. The final vision, a new creation. As we reach the final chapters, the language of the book escapes the boundaries of the Middle East and takes on a cosmic, eternal dimension. Isaiah looks past the struggle of rebuilding Jerusalem and sees the ultimate goal of human history. In chapter 65, God makes the grandest announcement of all. "Behold, I will create new heavens and a new earth." This is the happy ending that every human heart secretly longs for. It's a world where the sound of weeping and the cry of distress will be heard no more. It's a world where people build houses and actually get to live in them, where they plant vineyards and actually get to eat the fruit. It's a world where the wolf and the lamb will feed together, and they will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain. The book of Isaiah ends not with a period, but with an open-ended vision of a global family of worshippers gathered from every tongue and tribe, living in a world where the glory of God is the only light they need. Why Isaiah still matters. Having walked through all 66 chapters of this epic work, I want to share a personal perspective on why this book remains one of the most vital pieces of literature in the history of the world. Isaiah is often called the fifth gospel because it presents the story of redemption with such clarity and beauty. But beyond the theology, there is a profound psychological and emotional truth here. Isaiah captures the tension of the already and the not yet. We live in a world that is already touched by the light of the servant's grace, but is not yet fully transformed into the new creation. We live in the in-between. We experience the woe of chapter 6, but we lean on the comfort of chapter 40. We see the injustice of the empires, but we hope in the Prince of Peace. Isaiah gives us a vocabulary for our suffering and a map for our hope. It teaches us that holiness isn't about being perfect. It's about being clean through grace and then being sent into the mess. It teaches us that the greatest power in the universe isn't a sword or a throne, but a servant who was willing to be pierced for the sake of those who rejected him. In our polarized, chaotic, and often dark modern world, Isaiah stands as a lighthouse. It reminds us that history is not a circle of endless tragedy, but a line moving toward a magnificent destination. It tells us that no matter how deep the darkness, the light is coming. Thank you so much for journeying with me through the epic narrative of the book of Isaiah. This has been a long and deep exploration, and if you have stayed with me until this very moment, I truly appreciate your heart and your curiosity. These stories are more than just ancient ink on parchment. They are the foundational narratives that have shaped our culture, our morality, and our deepest hopes. If this walkthrough of Isaiah has touched you, or if it has given you a new perspective on justice, suffering, or hope, I would love to hear about it. What part of the vision moved you the most? Was it the terrifying holiness of the temple, the quiet sacrifice of the suffering servant, or the promise of a new heaven and a new earth? Please, leave a comment below. I read every single one, and I love seeing the different ways these stories resonate with you. If you want to see more content like this, deep dives into the great stories of the Bible, told with a focus on narrative and heart, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. Sharing this video with a friend who might need a little comfort today is also a wonderful way to help our community grow. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next story. We have so many more incredible journeys to take through the pages of history and faith. Until next time, remember the words of the prophet, "Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Keep looking toward the light. I'll see you in the next story.